All right. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Erica Liggins. Oh, let me move my mic over. Try that again. Hello, my name is Dr. Erica Liggins, licensed clinical psychologist and founder and CEO of Crush That Exam. And I'm so excited to be with you all today to answer your questions about the EPPP and everything that goes into it so that you can feel a bit more prepared to take on this journey. But before we get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm so passionate about educating people about the exam. So I have been licensed almost 10 years now. So I took the test about 11 years ago and I was terrified. I had horrific test anxiety, paralyzing test anxiety. I had never done well on any standardized test ever. I have a diagnosis of ADHD. And also, I had learned about the statistics for clinicians of color trying to pass this test. And I was just so terrified that I had come so far to get my degree and worked so hard. And that, what if I can't pass this test? What if I get stuck there forever and have all this debt and no way to like pay for it? And so I began studying during my postdoc year, and it was such a struggle. I mean, I really went through it. I couldn't even sit down to study because the anxiety was so strong. I would cry and have panic attacks and, crying spells, and I would avoid for weeks at a time. I mean, it was really, really terrible experience. And this went on for months. I would say probably the first half of my postdoc, I was in and out of studying, just couldn't get a groove, had no plan, no support, no guidance, no nothing. And luckily, though, one day I was like, if I don't figure out how to overcome this, I'm going to be done with postdoc and then I'm not going to have a job. And then I'm going to really be in an even tougher, worse situation. So I buckled down and I started to really work a lot on my mindset and reframing my thoughts and building up myself with more positive thoughts. And then I started to implement slowly a system that I now call the snowball study method that's specifically for the EPPP. And I started to develop it and I started to get like my footing and I started to figure out how to attack this thing. And I did it in a very systematic way. And that led me to end up, despite all my challenges, passing on the first try with a score of 659, which for doctoral level you only need a 500. So I passed really with ease. And I was so grateful for that. And, I was just so happy to be done that, as people around me, I started meeting more people who were facing the exam. I just started like coaching them, like kind of informally, because I just didn't want people to be as alone and overwhelmed as I was. And one day, a few years later, a good friend was like, I think you should coach. And I was like, what? Coach? I didn't even know that was a thing. I had no idea that it was like an official thing. And a few weeks later, I decided to give it a try and put myself out there. And that was several years ago now. And over the past few years, I've had the pleasure of helping so many people to pass the test. And now at Crush That Exam, we have a growing, bustling program that really gives a lot of comprehensive wraparound support for people who are confronting this journey. And so it's been really lovely to help the people who need it the most and to give them coaching that's affordable and comprehensive and actually effective. So I would love to talk with you all about your questions about the exam. Again, this is an open format tonight. I encourage you to just ask whatever is on your heart. Don't hold back.
I think for me,
Hi.
oh, sorry.
The
Oh,
question
yeah,
that I
let's go one
have,
at a time.
I've been
I think
studying for the EPPP
hold on
and
one
I
second,
feel
Gina.
like overwhelmed because there's too many information. And so I know that I know some of the information, but sometimes I feel like I don't know anything. So I would like to know what I can do.
Yes. Danielle, I'll come right back to you.
Mm.
Okay, so Juna, your question is you're feeling overwhelmed. You feel like you said you feel like you know the information or you don't know.
I feel like I know the information, but it's too much. Like I feel overwhelmed.
Yes. So, one of the things that's really important is really determining the difference between familiarity with with content and mastery. So, one of the things I teach in my coaching program is that familiarity is when we kind of have the general grasp of things, and when we're looking at it, we feel like, okay, I kind of know what this is about. Versus mastery is when you can, without looking at it, literally teach another person the concept and use a real life example to show that application piece and do all of that with ease and without like hesitation because it's just there. You know what I mean? And so, what I want to ask you is if you centered yourself and really sat down and thought about it, do you think that when you think about the material that you are in a place of familiarity or a place of mastery?
I believe it's mastery. My problem is anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get there, so I tend to forget everything,
Mm-hmm.
and my anxiety takes over.
Yes. Have you taken the real test before, or this is just with practice exams you have that experience?
I took the will test and I had for 95.
Ah, got it. So you got really close. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sure that was so difficult to get that close and not quite get there. So
yeah.
that's why you feel really strongly that you're ready, but when you get in there, the anxiety takes over and it just messes up things.
Mm-hmm.
So, what types of strategies have you used? Like, do you have accommodations to give you more time? Have you considered maybe some medication to help manage performance anxiety?
I have accommodation like 1.5 hours and extra like private room.
Good.
The last time when I went, so my doctor prescribed something and I was so drowsy.
Mm. So you weren't able to really focus.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I would say definitely talk with your doctor, see maybe if they need to shift the type of medication you're taking
Mm-hmm.
or reduce the dosage. So, a lot of times when people are using medication support for tests, they go one of two routes. Either
Mm-hmm.
they go using traditional like anti-anxiety medications like things like Xanax and things like that, which can be really effective for giving a calming effect, but if the dosage is too high, it zonks the person out and they're like a zombie and they can't really focus. So, for people who are experiencing pretty severe anxiety, that can be helpful. They just have to take a very small dosage and figure out with their doctor what that dosage is. On the flip side, a lot of other people will use things like beta blockers, like propranolol, to help block the physical symptoms of anxiety and help their body to feel calmer, which then also helps their mind to feel more calm. So, and those tend to have less of a sedative effect for most people, don't experience that too strongly. So I would definitely encourage you to go back to your doctor to troubleshoot
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do with the medication piece because if you're feeling that drowsy and really not feeling your best and you're still pulling off a 495, I have nothing but hope for you that with a slight medication adjustment that you can walk in there and pass with no problem the
Mm-hmm.
next time. What do you think?
I think so, and I'm tired. I feel like burnout.
Hmm. How long have you been studying and kind of been,
Um,
trying to do this thing?
I've been studying on and off for quite some times, and then I remember after I fell, so I didn't go back again. So it took me a while before I decided to take it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you were feeling pretty discouraged and, pretty frustrated with the whole process. So another thing to consider, and again, I don't know all the specifics about your situation, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we're feeling really burnt out and overwhelmed with the test, sometimes we need to take a break. Because what starts to happen is then when you sit down to study, it's like you're not really mentally there. You're reading over the stuff, but it's like nothing is really sinking in because
Mm-hmm.
we're just so frustrated and discouraged and angry. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes um taking a break from the process, it could be as little as 30 days just to give yourself a second. The other thing is, like, how many hours per week do you study on average?
Um, it's depends because I work full time. So sometimes I do like 1 or 2 hours in the morning, and then some night I do 1 hour in on the weekends.
So how many total hours per week is that?
So like maybe let me see, 2 in the morning. That's 10, 15. Sometimes like maybe 20 hours.
Okay. Okay, that's not an unreasonable amount, so that's good. Sometimes people get burnt out because they're pushing way, way too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you have, did you say you have children?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah, so 20 is okay, but again, you just might need a little bit of a break to just kind of recalibrate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that just a slight medication change would be really, really, really helpful to give you the edge the next time.
Yeah. So I'll talk to my doctor about the beta blocker.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that might be give you the same effect of calmness,
Mm-hmm.
but without making you feel like loopy or tired or, just not yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that was helpful.
It was. Thank you.
Good. Daniela, let me come back to you.
So I don't even know where to start. I guess I started studying like in April,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I just had a lot going on, and then I wasn't scoring where I was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the SIBO and I like bombed it pretty bad. And I think that just like validated like how hard the EPPP is and like all the statistics that I know. So that was like very discouraging. And now when I rescheduled it, because I have accommodations, there's not a lot. It's like so far out.
Mm.
So I think like find I one like I don't know how to structure my studying so that I don't forget everything I've already.
Yeah.
And that's what I struggle with. Like I can do like domain by domain, but then like where do I fit in like the review? And no matter how much I try to like balance it, it's
Mm-hmm.
like cramming.
Yeah. That's the hardest part about studying for this. And, when I coach people around the snowball study method is a specific structure that with a week to week plan that helps you to balance everything and juggle it all in a really structured, tiered way so that you're not trying to do too much all at once, all up front, but
Mhm.
you're also then not falling into the trap of studying something a bunch, getting it down, and then leaving it to go to other things and then not coming back to it till the very end.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually, in my coaching program, I teach people, I said most people when they're studying their own, they fall into one of two categories. Either they're what I call dumpers, which is where they focus on a domain for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then they don't look at it again for weeks or months. Or they fall into the squirrel category where they jump around from domain to domain to domain all at the same time trying to do it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have a middle ground. And that's what I teach people is to find the middle ground between those two things. Because there is so much information. I mean, it's a lot that you have to learn for this exam. And then the other thing too, Daniela, which you touched on, is studying at the wrong time. So I have a whole module in my program about not studying when you're not ready, like if your life is going through too many personal life challenges or transitions, even
Mhm.
really happy things like weddings and travel and babies being born, like stuff that's like things that people want. Because it just throws off your schedule. It makes causes more stress, less time, less energy, and then you can't really study consistently. Like if we look back, Daniela, would you say your studying was consistent during that time?
I think it was, and I feel like the issue was that internship being away stressed me out so much that I wasn't sleeping.
Ah, so you were consistent, but maybe because you were exhausted, overwhelmed, maybe the quality of the studying may
Yeah,
not have been because you just weren't mentally just weren't
yeah,
like your full self, your best self. And that's what happens because sometimes people will find the wherewithal to put in the hours, but the quality just isn't, they're not there. Like I know when I was having extreme test anxiety, I mean, I would read the same paragraph 5 times. I couldn't tell you what
mhm,
it said because I
yeah,
wasn't there mentally. And then what breaks my heart for you and so many others is that then you go into the real exam or the SIPO or whatever, which I actually discourage people from taking that because I feel like it never really translates well. Like people will fail it and then pass the real thing, or they pass that and then they fail the real thing. I don't love it personally, but people will go in to take that or the real thing and they're not able to perform the way that they want. And then it just creates more anxiety, more self doubt, and more negative feelings about themselves and the exam and their ability to pass it. And even though a part of their brain knows, okay, I was really overwhelmed, I was going through a lot personally, it was a challenging season of my life, it doesn't stop that voice in the back of your head from being like, no, this test is just really hard. And see, you're a person of color, you're never going to pass this thing. You know that
yeah,
self-talk that just wears you down. So I truly believe that this test is very passable when you have the right support and you're in the right season of your life. So I really hope that you don't give up because once things and hopefully maybe things are already more stable and then you get with the right study plan, then you're going to see how different you study when you have more of a plan and more support and your head is in the right place.
yeah.
Everything will feel so different. That's what my coaching clients tell me all the time when they were like, oh my God, I was going through a divorce and I was moving and I was doing this and it was so much happening and I couldn't think straight. And then once they study while things are more stable and they actually have a plan that's structured, they're like, oh, now my brain can absorb.
Mhm.
Totally different vibe, totally different feeling.
Do
Does
you
that all
think
make sense?
like people,
Mhm.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
do you think like you should review like 2 or 3 domains a week?
No, it's way too much to start. So the thing about the way I teach people to study, and the snowball study method is a little complex to explain in depth, but I will give you some ideas to think about. So, a lot of test prep companies will teach you to study in like a very formatted way. Like, do this domain, then do this domain, then do this domain. They don't include repeated review so that you can actually retain all this stuff. And it's too cookie cutter because we're two different people. Maybe certain topics I had more classes in, or they're personal interests of mine, or based on the type of setting I'm working in, I have more contact with certain domains than you do, and vice versa. So you need your study plan to be fully customizable to your strengths and weaknesses, while also ensuring that the plan has you focusing more on the areas that are most heavily emphasized on the test And the plan also has to include repeated review of concepts and making sure that you use practice exams at the right time. So let me ask you this. When you were studying, when did you incorporate practice exams? How early into your journey?
Probably when I was like two domains away from finishing. Well, no. I think like I took the initial one and
Right.
then I took like the A tabs one probably like every 6 weeks, but then I bought different ones.
Hmm.
Um, because A tabs is more like memory recall, I feel like. But at the time, I think like with everything, it was hard navigating, finishing the domains, reviewing them, and then reviewing the test. So honestly, I wasn't reviewing the test because I didn't have time. It was either that or like read. And I think I just didn't, I stuck too much to to the ATAB study guide that just wasn't realistic for me.
Yeah. And I think too, some of these test prep companies often are not writing plans for people of color who already are coming in feeling very overwhelmed
Yeah.
by these tests that are certainly not written by us for sure, right? Not written by us, not written for us, and they don't take neurodivergence into account. So, and I used ATABs as well. And let me tell you, Daniela, when I read the book on how they were recommending the study, I curled up in fetal position, cried for 2 hours, and then avoided studying for 3 months. I
Yeah.
could not make sense of it. I still don't understand to this day. I don't get it. So, you know, it's very important that studying for this exam be broken down into phases. So like when I teach people to study, there are distinct phases that you go through where we're focusing on one goal at a time and they build on each other. Because if you're trying to do everything at the same time, like trying to review, trying to learn the stuff, trying to read it, trying to do tests, it just gets all jumbled up. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
It really does. And so I just want you to know that the experience that you're having is very common when people are doing this by themselves and they're trying to work with the study books and they're just trying to figure it out. And that's why coaching can be just so helpful to really give you that structured plan and give you something to really hold on to so that you can walk through it with a sense of like purpose and structure. Because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you just kind of feel like you're, you know what I mean, floating,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to figure it out, and it's not your fault.
Yeah, maybe I just have to do like I took a practice exam today just to give me some guidance of like how to create a study plan because I test like in about a month.
Hmm. Would you feel comfortable sending me a private message right now with what
Hmm.
your score was?
Yeah.
And I won't share the score. Okay, and have you ever taken that test before?
No.
Okay. And you test in about a month.
Hmm.
So where you're at right now tells me you have familiarity with everything, which is a good place to start.
Hmm.
So where you go from here to where we need to be, that's where that mastery comes in, where you've really, really, really got a strong hold of the material. And so this is where the structure really comes in to make sure that you review, like to make sure that the concepts are a little bit more solidified. Um, so you're in the general ballpark, which is good. You're on your way.
Hmm.
But that's where, if I were working with you, I would put you on a review schedule to really get into these domains. Um, and I would want to see you do a bit more of the active review using space practice of reviewing over and over again over a span of time to get it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that way, when you're doing practice exams, we're just looking for the little details that we're missing. Because sometimes when you take practice tests before we have a stronger command of the material, it's almost like it's not helpful in a way because it's like, okay, well, I have so much to work on. Where do I even, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Is that all
Like,
making sense?
yeah, like I did a tutor with Dr. David, but I feel like it just wasn't like a good fit.
Mm,
And then with psych prep, I did the feedback, but they're recommending you to just use the practice test as a study guide.
mm,
And then I think that's when I get overwhelmed with like figuring out the flashcards and then the review of the test and then the general review of my notes.
yeah. And let me even ask you, has anybody ever reviewed your notes before?
No.
Hmm. So I started doing that as a coach a couple years ago because the notes are the foundation. And oh, I'm not even say sometimes, most of the time, and I can't speak for you because I haven't seen yours, so I'm just speaking on common trends. I have only ever had a handful of times in 6 years of coaching where I have felt like the notes were ready to go. Most of the time, the notes need more depth for most people. Because
Mhm.
again, when you're doing this by yourself and you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, you don't have guidance, it's hard to know what do I take notes on? What's important? And ATABS is known for being very dense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's rough. So, one of the first things I would do as your coach, if I were to be your coach, is I would actually be reviewing your sample. I request samples of people's notes and I review those notes because I got to see what you're looking at, what and and what you're learning from because that actually might be the problem. The problem might be that the notes are missing things. So even when you are reviewing, we're we're missing ingredients. So we can't make the cake, right? If we're missing
Yeah.
some of the ingredients. So so being a coach is kind of like being a little detective. You kind of have to like diagnose the problem in a way and figure out where the missing piece is. Because there's no point in getting you to do more active review if the notes themselves that you're using may be missing things. Now, let's say we look at the notes and we're like, man, these notes are awesome. They're great. Then we would go to building a structure of how you're going to review the notes based on your strengths and areas of growth, along with making sure we prioritize the most um, meaty parts of the test.
Hmm.
And then
Okay.
when you start to do that, you start to see the knowledge filling in. You start to see the gaps coming together. And then when you go back to taking practice tests, we see a major improvement, which then gives you confidence. Like I always tell people, if we do the first and second phase correctly, the third phase, I'll use the word one time, one of my coaching clients, they said, this feels like a victory lap because they worked so hard in the first two phases that when they
Hmm.
got to doing the practice tests, it was like the cherry on top, like the culmination of all their hard work. And it just like felt like everything came together.
Yeah. Okay. That does make because there was a point where I was like copying and pasting my notes, but I feel like it's that con it I'm more receptive to my notes when I like I've been using AI to make visuals and stuff, and
Hmm.
that clicks way more for my review than making meaty notes.
Yes. And so, and everybody, the way that they do notes looks different. It might be, it seems like you also like flashcards a little bit.
Hmm.
I use a mixture because maybe it's my ADHD brain. I just can't do one thing. So I had some things on flashcards where it made sense for me. I had other things that were visual charts. Other things were like literal drawings. They were ugly, but hey, they worked because I
Hmm.
am not good at that kind of thing. But I made them and I made them kind of colorful and that helped. And so I used a mixture of mediums to make the information make sense to me so that when I was looking at it, I could like review and rehearse it in an active way. So, we gotta first double check and make sure the notes are solid. And so it sounds like through our conversation, some light bulbs are going off that, oh, maybe
Hmm.
my notes need to be tidied up a bit, or I need to be reformulated in a way that works for your amazing brain.
Yeah. Okay. Things to think
Yeah.
about.
I hope that was helpful.
Yeah.
We have a newcomer. Would you like to introduce yourself? Um, the name on the screen is Veroto. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from. Oh, maybe they stepped away. Does anyone else have any questions about the exam, about studying, about anything?
I have a question. Um,
Mhm.
um, I create like notes for me to study, and sometimes I feel like I put too many information in my note. So there is one person. Her name is Dr. Bui. So she created like a study guide. So
Mhm.
I was going to try to review the study guide in addition to my note. Is that a good thing to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, and first, let me validate that just as I was talking with Daniela, that we have to be careful and make sure our notes don't miss pieces.
Mm-hmm.
We also have to make sure we don't go to the other extreme where our notes are almost like as if we're copying from the book in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this really delicate balance of being both thorough but yet still concise.
Mm-hmm.
So, why do we sometimes make our notes too verbose? Usually, it's anxiety. We're afraid we're going to miss something. So, we want to write every single word, um, most commonly. Or maybe it's just a skill that we never got really comfortable in doing. And so we just feel more comfortable writing every word because we not sure what else to do. So that's why sometimes we end up in that situation. So then where do we go from there? So I'm not going to say yes or no. I just want to give you some things to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So in my coaching program, I teach people the common mistakes that people make when they're studying. And one of them is information overload. Sometimes we gather too many study materials, like we make our own, and then we get some from over here, and then we get some from over there, and then we buy some, and we then end up with so much stuff that we shut down. We just don't even know what to look at. In fact, I was talking with a coaching client just the other day who was feeling just so overwhelmed with studying and the active review. And they were having a hard time getting through all of it in the time frame that we allotted. And finally, we discovered that part of the reason why they were having such a difficult time balancing everything and making progress was because they were trying to study two sets of study materials. They had their materials that they created and a whole nother set from another person. And both sets of materials were great, but it was just double. It was overload. So they were just so stressed out trying to do it all. So, Juna, I think what I want you to be careful of is falling into that and overwhelming yourself trying to study two different people's stuff. So, what I always tell people, now I did take a little bit of study materials from a friend, I'm not against it, but I only took things that made sense to me. Like, I liked the way it was formatted, it spoke to my brain, and the few things that I took, I didn't recreate those things. So it didn't have double of things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So ask yourself, what does her notes have that yours don't? And then you kind of got to pick what you're going to use.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to make sure it's still thorough.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Let me ask you, Juna, when you look at your own notes, do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel like you can't get through it because it's too dense?
So what I do with my notes, so when I read like a section, so I will summarize it,
Hmm.
and the ones that became like too much, it's like physio, because you have to do the brain part, you have to do the disorders, you have to do medication side effects and stuff like that. So I
Hmm.
was too much information.
So you feel like it's your notes are too much.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really because you wrote too much or just because the information in and of itself is a lot?
The information is too much, like on the
Yes.
like all of the stuff. So I feel like if I can like just summarize, like tell me like five brain part, like to just to study, I will do that and I will be good. You know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I have tough news.
Mm-hmm.
You really do have to know all that stuff though.
I know.
I'm sorry. Like I can't sit here and tell you, "Oh, just know these five brain part." Like you have to know them all.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's presented in the materials, like you really do need to know it.
Mm-hmm.
Um so again, that's why I teach people to layer things and trust that with repeated review over time
Mm-hmm.
and reviewing in the right way, the stuff really does sink in. It's like I remember walking to my exam and just being like, I have an insane amount of information in my brain right now. And I couldn't believe it was all in there, but it was because of the way that I studied and prepped. So,
Mm-hmm.
what I want you to do is we're going to honor your feelings that because they're based in reality. This is a lot. You're not making this up in your mind. It is a lot. But when you tell yourself over and over and this is a lot, this is a lot, this is overwhelming, that reinforces that anxious, overwhelmed feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it shuts you down, and then it leads to possibly making the mistake of being skimpy in what you study, like over focusing on certain details and then leaving other details out, which is another common mistake people make. So I want you to think about how can you reframe what you're telling yourself about physio?
Mm-hmm.
What's a new belief you can adopt? Honoring that, yes, it is a lot, but reformulating that thought in a way that can leave you feeling more hopeful.
Okay. So maybe I will like review the brain charts like more often. Maybe that can help.
Yeah. So telling yourself with repeated review, I can get this.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, again, the overwhelmed feeling causes people to shut down and avoid, which
Mm-hmm.
means they don't get the opportunity to rehearse the stuff over and over again. So then they don't get the opportunity to really master it, which then just causes even more negative beliefs that we can't learn it. You see how it becomes like a self-fulfilling
Mm-hmm. Prophecy.
prophecy? Yeah. So pull that brain chart out and let's keep reviewing it. Don't give
Okay.
up.
I'll do that.
And the good news is, Juna, another thing I want to tell you is remember, you got very close to passing. So if you can hold on to the content knowledge you have already, developed for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just add a little bit more plus the right medication,
Mm-hmm.
ready to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Be hopeful. All right, friends. Who else has a question? Sandra, I haven't heard from you. Talk to me.
Yeah, I guess my situation is my circumstances are unique.
Mhm.
Um I my board just a brief synopsis of the situation, deactivated my license because I didn't pass. So it
I'm sorry.
that yeah, it has caused considerable distress.
Mhm.
So now I not able to work in the field, so I am wanting to know. I've been studying to prepare to take it again, and I've been dealing with flashcards primarily.
Mhm.
Um, what I do, I read the notes, and then I based upon the exam questions or the practice questions, I make flashcards, and I go through and read the flashcards a couple times. But um the question is, I mean, it has been said in terms of you know the philosophy of approaching the exam, focusing on the big six versus the other minor domains, and how do you tackle 11 domains?
Mhm.
Because I don't want to have to, I mean, fail this exam again. I can tell you my score. I um failed with a 433.
Mhm.
Some of the questions I remember changing. I regretted that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'm so sorry that you're in this situation.
yeah.
We've actually had many people in our community who have been in the same situation where,
Okay. Yeah.
oh, yeah, so it breaks my heart to say this because I wish this wasn't the case, but your situation actually isn't very unique. I see this
Mm,
all the time, which it breaks my heart, right? Um, we see people all the time who have been forced to leave their jobs, or again, they live in a state where they have a temporary license, and once that runs out, they can't do any type of clinical work. Um, I see this all the time.
mm,
And it's very difficult because now you're trying to balance how do I make a living for myself, support myself while having the mental space to study for this test,
mm-hmm.
which will change my whole situation and allow me to
Yes.
get back in the field, make more money. But it's also so stressful and so difficult. It really is a catch 22 kind of. It's very difficult. And then we're dealing with all sorts of shame and embarrassment and guilt and sadness, and that we're in this situation, which isn't even your fault because this field doesn't prepare people well for this process, and it sets people up to be in your exact situation.
Well, I feel embarrassed. People asking me what happened. The clients are asking what, and so I sometimes
Yeah,
just wake up anxious, embarrassed. I have to be hiding. Don't want them to see me and ask questions and all that. So
I know it's very
it,
difficult.
it's a difficult. It's a trauma, and I have had to deal with it.
It's very difficult. So, first things first, that I always tell people when they're in this kind of situation, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a very real thing.
Mm,
We have to make sure those bottom two layers are stable enough before we will have the mental or emotional space to study and study effectively. Because what I see happening with people in your situation, Sandra, is because of the urgency and the stress to get back to work, savings is dwindling down. It's a lot
mm-hmm.
of that goes into this.
Yes.
People end up rushing through. They feel even more pressure to pass. They spend money on the test that they don't really have. And then they have another failed attempt. And now we're really in crisis because now savings has dwindled down. We've lost another, several $100s. It- so, what I always tell people, first things first, and I don't know your exact situation, but I just want to also, for anyone who's going to watch this later who might be in a similar, first things first is regaining financial stability in some way. And it may mean taking a job outside of the field, maybe a pay cut. It might be something you don't really like, but it's something that can keep us above water enough so that we can have the mental capacity to study. That's the first thing. Then once we feel some sort of bit of stability, then we can get back into studying. Now, I heard something, Sandra, that concerned me that I want to make sure that you don't fall into. So there's this thing that goes around that says focus on the big six, focus on the big six. Although, yes, the big six should be your focus, sometimes people take that to the extreme. And I don't know if you are, but I just want to say this to make sure that you don't.
Mm-hmm.
They go to such an extreme with that they don't even bother to study the smaller domains. I've all the time because I do an intake session with every new person after they join our program. And after they listen to the common mistakes to avoid audio in our audio program, our audio coaching program, then we have a conversation about, okay, where did things go wrong? And a lot of times people will say, I'm realizing I didn't study all the content. I only focused on the big six. So be careful about that. The big six needs the majority of our time, but not all of our time.
Yes.
Okay. That's something I want to say. Um, so it's very important when you have that kind of pressure on you to really make sure you have the right support that so that you can study in a way that is really thorough so that
Yeah.
you can go into the next test ready to get it the next time.
Yes.
So,
Um,
go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you.
No, no, please go ahead.
No, I was thinking perhaps it may be better if, at some point I may consult with you privately
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and see where I am right now. Because it's last year, my last work in November, it was a trauma. I mean, but
Mm-hmm.
I leave it at that.
Yes. It's very painful, Sandra. And we have people in our program right now who have been in a very similar situation. Um, it's really difficult. So I would love to meet with you to just
Yes.
give you some support. Um,
Yes.
yeah, for sure. So I'm looking at our time. We're going to wind down. I just want to thank you all so much for coming to this EPPP Q&A. I hope that it was really, really helpful. And so I'm going to stop the recording.